The red dust of Texas rose in lazy spirals beneath the merciless August sun, painting the horizon in shades of rust and amber. The year was 1883, and the small town of Red Hollow squatted like a tired dog at the edge of nowhere, its wooden buildings weathered gray by wind and time. Main Street stretched barely 200 yards, flanked by Sullivan's General Store, the Broken Wheel Saloon, and Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house, the sum total of civilization in this forgotten corner of the frontier. Gideon Price sat astride his bay stallion at the edge of town, his weathered face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. At 35, he cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with hands that spoke of hard work and eyes that held too many memories. His ranch, the Double Diamond, sprawled across 15,000 acres of prime grazing land, making him one of the wealthiest men in 3 counties. Yet wealth meant little when you ate your meals alone and your bed held nothing but ghosts. He'd come to town for supplies, same as every month. But Sullivan had mentioned something that piqued his interest, a woman, new to Red Hollow, looking for work. Says she can cook. Old Sullivan had wheezed over his ledger. Pretty thing too, though she's got a look about her, like she's running from something. Gideon dismounted outside the boarding house, his spurs jangling against the wooden boards. The afternoon heat pressed down like a physical weight, and somewhere a dog barked half-heartedly before surrendering to the torpor. He knocked on Mrs. Abernathy's door, hat in hand. The proprietress appeared, her face pinched with perpetual disapproval. "Mr. Price," she acknowledged with a curt nod. "If you're looking for that woman Sullivan mentioned." "You're too late. I sent her packing this morning." "Any particular reason?" Mrs. Abernathy's lips pursed tighter. "I run a respectable establishment. Can't have unmarried women of questionable background disturbing my regular boarders." She had no references, no family name I recognized. For all I know, she could be one of those. Well, you understand. Gideon understood perfectly. Mrs. Abernathy's respectable establishment was a monument to small-minded prejudice. Where'd she go? Last I saw, she was sitting outside the saloon, though Lord knows what a decent woman would be doing there. The door closed with a decisive click. The Broken Wheel Saloon stood at the far end of Main Street, its batwing doors hanging crooked. Gideon found her exactly where Mrs. Abernathy had said, sitting on a rough bench outside, her single carpetbag at her feet. She wore a simple brown traveling dress, modest but well-made, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun. When she looked up at his approach, he was struck by eyes the color of sage honey, beautiful but wary. "Ma'am," he touched his hat brim. "Name's Gideon Price. I heard you might be looking for work." She stood, smoothing her skirts with an unconscious gesture of dignity. "Clara Hale," she replied, her voice carrying a faint accent he couldn't quite place, maybe Eastern, maybe Southern. "And yes, Mr. Price, I am seeking employment. I'm an experienced cook and housekeeper, though I seem to be having difficulty convincing anyone in this town of that fact." "You have references." A shadow crossed her features. "My previous employer passed away suddenly. His family had no need of my services afterward." She met his gaze directly. "I understand if that's insufficient. Good day, Mr. Price." She bent to retrieve her bag, but Gideon's voice stopped her. "Can you really cook?" Clara straightened, a spark of pride flickering in her eyes. "I trained in New Orleans before coming west. I can prepare anything from simple ranch fare to dishes fit for a governor's table." "New Orleans," he mused. That explained the accent Creole influence softening her words. "And you're willing to work on a ranch? It's isolated, 15 miles from town, no neighbors for miles." "Isolation doesn't frighten me, Mr. Price. People do." There was weight in those words, a story untold. Gideon studied her for a long moment. His instincts, honed by years of reading men and cattle, told him she was running from something, but they also told him she was no saloon girl or confidence woman. There was steel in her spine and sorrow in her eyes, qualities he recognized all too well. Pays $40 a month plus room and board. You'll have your own quarters, the old foreman's cabin. Works hard, and I don't tolerate laziness or lies. Still interested. Hope dawned across her features, quickly tempered by caution. When would I start? Now, if you're ready. I've got a wagon full of supplies to load. For the first time since he'd approached, Clara smiled, a small, tentative thing that transformed her face. Then yes, Mr. Price, I accept your offer. As they walked toward his wagon, neither noticed the man watching from the shadow of the livery stable, dust-covered and lean as a coyote. He studied Clara with cold intensity before melting back into the shadows. A telegram would be sent before nightfall. Its message brief but significant. Found her. Red Hollow, Texas, working for a rancher named Price. The loading of supplies became a study in contrasts. Gideon, accustomed to years of solitary work, found himself stealing glances at his new employee. Clara moved with quiet efficiency, organizing the provisions with a methodical care that spoke of someone used to making order from chaos. When young Tommy Sullivan tried to overcharge for the flour, she caught the error immediately, her sharp mind hidden beneath that demure exterior. 15 miles is a long way, Clara observed as they headed out of town, the wagon wheels creaking a rhythm against the hard-packed earth. Do you make this trip often? Once a month, sometimes less. Gideon kept his eyes on the horizon. I've got good men who handle most things. Jose, my foreman, usually sends someone if we need supplies between trips. And Mrs. Price, does she not care for town visits? The question hung in the air like dust motes. Gideon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. There is no Mrs. Price, not anymore. Clara had the grace not to pursue it. They rode in silence for several miles, the landscape gradually shifting from the scrubland around town to the richer grassland of the Double Diamond. Gideon found the quiet companionable rather than awkward. She didn't feel the need to fill every moment with chatter like some women. As they crested a rise, the ranch house came into view, and Gideon heard Clara's soft intake of breath. The main house stood 2 stories tall, built of limestone and timber, with a wide wraparound porch and tall windows that caught the afternoon light. But even from a distance, the signs of neglect were visible: shutters hanging askew, paint peeling, the garden overgrown with mesquite and sage. It's beautiful, Clara said softly. Or it was. Built it 7 years ago. Gideon's voice was carefully neutral. Haven't had much cause to maintain it lately. They pulled up to the front of the house as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Jose emerged from the barn, his weathered face curious beneath his wide sombrero. The Mexican foreman had been with Gideon since the beginning, one of the few who'd stayed through everything. Patron. Jose nodded, his eyes flickering to Clara with polite interest. Jose, this is Miss Hale. She'll be taking over the cooking and housekeeping. Show her to the foreman's cabin when we're done unloading. Si, senor. Jose touched his hat to Clara. Welcome to Double Diamond, senorita. As the men unloaded the wagon, Clara stood on the porch, surveying her new domain. The front door stood slightly ajar, and through it, she could see dust motes dancing in the fading light. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to bring it back to life. The kitchen's through there, Gideon said, coming up beside her. Haven't used it proper in near 3 years. Been taking meals with the hands in the bunkhouse. 3 years, Clara repeated thoughtfully. That's a long time to live with ghosts. Mr. Price. He turned sharply, but her expression held no judgment, only understanding. What makes you think there are ghosts? Every abandoned room has them. The question is whether we let them rule us or make peace with them. She picked up her carpet bag. If you'll show me the kitchen, I'll see what needs doing. The kitchen, when they reached it, was a testament to neglect. Dust covered every surface, and mouse droppings spotted the floor. But the bones were good: a large cast-iron stove, solid work tables, ample shelving. Clara walked through slowly, running her fingers along the surfaces, her mind already cataloging what needed to be done. "I'll need lye soap, scrub brushes, and whitewash," she said briskly. "Also, those mice will have to go. Do you have a good mouser among the barn cats?" "I'll have Jose bring one up." Gideon watched her survey the room like a general planning a campaign. "You sure you want this job? Miss Hale, it's a lot of work for one woman." Clara turned to face him, and in the dying light, her eyes held depths he couldn't fathom. "Mr. Price, I've been running for 6 months, sleeping in stages and cheap boarding houses, looking over my shoulder at every turn. A house full of dust and mice. That's not a hardship, that's a blessing." Before he could respond, a shout came from outside. Jose's voice. "Urgent! Patron riders coming!" Gideon was out the door in 3 strides, his hand moving instinctively to the Colt at his hip. 3 riders approached from the north, too far yet to make out clearly in the gathering dusk. Behind him, he sensed Clara's presence, heard her sharp intake of breath. "Do you recognize them?" he asked. "No." But her voice was tight, afraid. "I mean, I can't tell from here." The riders came closer, resolving into familiar shapes, cowboys from the Rocking J, the neighboring ranch. Gideon relaxed, but Clara remained tense beside him until the men had delivered their message, something about strays mixing with Rocking J cattle, and ridden off. "Miss Hale," Gideon said carefully. "Is there something I should know? Someone you're expecting might come looking." Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking younger and more vulnerable. "There's always someone looking, Mr. Price, but I swear to you, I've done nothing wrong. Nothing except refuse to be what someone else decided I should be." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Jose will show you to your cabin. You can start on the kitchen tomorrow." As Clara followed Jose toward the small cabin that would be her home, Gideon remained on the porch, watching the last light bleed from the sky. He'd hired her on instinct, going against his usual caution. Time would tell if that instinct was sound or if he just invited trouble onto his land. In the growing darkness, neither of them noticed the lone rider on the distant ridge, watching the ranch through field glasses before wheeling his horse and disappearing into the night. The message he would carry was simple. The woman was here, protected now by a man with money and guns. This would require careful planning. The first day was ending, but their story was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast Texas night, forces were already in motion that would test them both in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The morning sun slanted through the kitchen windows, illuminating a transformation in just 1 week. Clara had worked what the ranch hands were calling a miracle. The floors gleamed, the windows sparkled, and the smell of fresh bread had replaced the musty odor of neglect. She moved through the space with practiced efficiency, her sleeves rolled up, a streak of flour across one cheek. Gideon paused in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, watching her work. He'd taken to timing his mornings to coincide with hers, drawn by the warmth and life she'd brought to the dead heart of his house. Today she was kneading dough, her movements rhythmic and sure. "You're up early again," Clara observed without turning. She'd developed an uncanny ability to sense his presence. "Habit," he replied, moving to the stove where coffee waited. "Though the smell of your biscuits might have something to do with it." She smiled, a more frequent occurrence these days. "Flattery will get you an extra portion at breakfast, Mr. Price." "Gideon," he corrected, not for the first time. "We've been over this. And as I've explained, maintaining proper boundaries is important. You're my employer." She shaped the dough with deft movements. "Though I appreciate the gesture." He leaned against the counter, studying her. The morning light caught the auburn in her hair, turning it to flame. "Jose says you've been asking about the vegetable garden out back." It's a shame to let it go to waste. With some work, we could have fresh vegetables through the fall." She glanced at him. "If that's acceptable, of course. Do what you like with it." He paused. Margaret loved that garden. It was the first time he'd spoken his late wife's name aloud in Clara's presence. She stilled for a moment, then continued working the dough. "Tell me about her." The request surprised him. Most people avoided the subject like a plague. She was everything this place isn't now. Warm, full of laughter. She could make flowers grow in pure sand. Seemed like, his voice roughened, fever took her and our boy 3 years ago. Ben was only 5. "I'm sorry." Clara's words were simple, but the weight of understanding in them ran deep. Losing a child, there's no pain quite like it. Something in her tone made him look at her sharply. "You sound like you know." She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, softly, "I had a daughter, Rose. She would have been 4 this spring." She shaped the biscuits with hands that trembled slightly. "Scarlet fever. My husband blamed me, said I should have called the doctor sooner. Maybe he was right." "Clara," Gideon started, but she shook her head. "It's why I left, after she died, after my husband changed. I couldn't stay, couldn't be what he wanted anymore." She slid the biscuits into the oven with practiced movements. "So you see, Mr. Price Gideon, we both have our ghosts." They stood in companionable silence, 2 people bound by shared loss. "Finally," Gideon said. "The garden would be good to see alive again. Order whatever seeds you need from Sullivan's." That afternoon, Clara attacked the dining room with the same determination she'd shown in the kitchen. She was polishing the long mahogany table when she heard footsteps on the porch, not Gideon's measured tread or Jose's shuffle, but something furtive. Her blood chilled, moving quietly. She edged toward the window, peering through the lace curtains. A man stood on the porch, dusty and travel-worn, his hand raised to knock. She didn't recognize him, but something about his bearing, the way his eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, sent alarm bells ringing. The knock came, sharp and demanding. Clara smoothed her apron, forced her breathing to calm, and opened the door part way. "Yes?" The man's eyes widened slightly, a smile spreading across his weathered face. Well, Mrs. Mason. Or should I say, Mrs. Hale now." Clara's hand tightened on the door. "I think you're mistaken, sir. My name is Clara Hale, and I've never been married." The lie came smoothly, born of months of practice. "Come now, Sarah, we both know that's not true." He leaned closer, and she smelled whiskey and trail dust. "Sam's been looking for you. He's mighty upset about you running off with his money." "I don't know any Sam, and I certainly didn't take anyone's money. You need to leave. Mr. Price doesn't take kindly to strangers bothering his employees." The man's eyes hardened. "Price, is it well, you tell Mr. Price that Jake Morrison stopped by. Tell him he might want to ask his new cook about the $5,000 she stole from Sam Crane. I'll be in town for a few days if he wants to discuss it." He touched his hat mockingly and sauntered back to his horse. Clara watched him ride away, her heart hammering against her ribs. $5,000. If only she'd managed to take that much. But all she'd grabbed was the $200 hidden in the flour jar. Barely enough to get her this far. Trouble. She spun to find Gideon behind her, his expression dark. How much had he heard? "A man looking for someone. He had the wrong house." Her voice sounded thin even to her own ears. "Morrison. He said his name was." Gideon's eyes never left her face. "And he mentioned Sam Crane. I've heard that name. Runs cattle down near the border, among other things." Clara's silence spoke volumes. "Are you Sarah Mason?" he asked quietly. She closed her eyes, seeing no point in continued denial. "I was. Sarah Mason died 6 months ago in a fire that destroyed half of Sam's ranch. At least, That's what I needed him to believe. And the money? There was no $5,000. I took $200 money I'd saved from selling eggs and garden produce. My money. Her chin lifted defiantly. Sam liked to control everything, including every penny that came into the house. When I left, I took what was mine. Gideon studied her for a long moment. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't. Clara met his gaze steadily. You should ride into town, wire Sam Crane, and collect whatever reward he's offering. It would be the smart thing to do. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. He turned away. Morrison's type doesn't visit just to chat. He'll be back, probably with friends. I'll leave tonight. I won't bring danger to your door. You'll stay. His voice brooked no argument. I hired you to do a job, and that job's not done. Besides, he added more quietly, this house needs you. It's been dead too long. Clara blinked back sudden tears. You don't understand. Sam Crane isn't just my former husband. He's a dangerous man. He runs guns to whoever pays best, intimidates smaller ranchers into selling cheap, and he doesn't like losing what he considers his property. I've dealt with dangerous men before. Gideon's hand rested on his gun belt. Let me worry about Crane. That evening, Clara prepared dinner with shaking hands. The brief peace she'd found was shattered. She'd been foolish to think she could outrun her past. Foolish to believe she could build something new here. She was setting the table she'd convinced Gideon to take his meals in the dining room instead of the bunkhouse when she noticed something that made her freeze. There, on the mantelpiece. A photograph she hadn't seen before. A woman with kind eyes and a small boy with Gideon's serious expression. I found it this morning, Gideon said from the doorway. In a drawer in my study. Figured it was time to bring them back out. She was beautiful, Clara said softly. She was. He moved to stand beside her. For 3 years, I couldn't bear to look at their faces. Now, it seems wrong to hide them away, like I'm ashamed of loving them. You're healing, Clara observed. It's a process. Sometimes we take steps backward, but eventually we move forward. Speaking from experience. She touched the frame gently. I don't have any pictures of Rose. We couldn't afford a photographer. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll forget her face. Gideon's hand covered hers on the frame, warm and calloused. You won't. Love doesn't forget. They stood there, two damaged souls finding comfort in shared understanding, until the sound of approaching horses broke the spell. Stay inside, Gideon ordered, checking his weapon as he moved toward the door. But Clara was already at the window. It's Jose and 2 of the hands. They're riding hard. Gideon yanked open the door as the men reined in their lathered horses. Patron! Jose gasped. Riders on the north pasture. 5, maybe 6. They cut the fence, scattered the herd. Morrison, Clara whispered. Gideon's face hardened. Jose postguards tonight. Nobody rides alone. He turned to Clara. Pack your things. You're moving into the main house. The foreman's cabin is too isolated. But no arguments. You'll take the blue room upstairs. It has a lock and faces the barn. Jose will see anyone approaching. As Clara gathered her few belongings, she found herself torn between gratitude and guilt. Gideon was risking everything for her, and she couldn't understand why. In her experience, men didn't offer protection without expecting something in return. Later, as she unpacked in the blue room, clearly a guest room, impersonal and unused, she heard Gideon's voice through the window, talking to his men. Nobody threatens what's mine. He was saying, Miss Hale is under my protection. Make sure the men understand that. What's mine? The words should have frightened her, echoing as they did Sam's possessive nature. But from Gideon, they felt different. Protective rather than controlling. Safe rather than suffocating. As she prepared for bed, Clara allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she'd found more than just a job at the Double Diamond. Maybe she'd found a home. Outside, hidden in the darkness beyond the barn, Jake Morrison lowered his field glasses and smiled. Sam would pay extra for this information. The woman had found herself a protector. That would make things more interesting, but also more profitable. After all, a wealthy rancher would pay handsomely to avoid trouble. Or perhaps he wouldn't. Morrison's smile widened. Either way, he'd get what he came for. The letter appeared at dawn, slipped beneath the kitchen door while the ranch still slept. Clara found it when she came down to start breakfast, the white envelope stark against the dark floorboards. Her name was written across it in bold, slashing strokes she recognized with a chill of dread. With trembling fingers, she opened it, though she already knew what it would say. Sarah, my dear wife, you can't hide forever. I'm coming for what's mine. You have 1 week to return home with my money, or your new friend will learn what happens to those who harbor thieves. I've been patient, but my patience has limits. Don't test them. C. Clara sank into a chair, the letter crumpling in her fist. 1 week. How had he found her so quickly? Morrison must have wired him immediately. She'd been a fool to think she could escape, a fool to endanger good people with her presence. You're up early, even for Clara. Gideon stood in the doorway, taking in her pale face and shaking hands. What's wrong? Wordlessly, she held out the letter. He read it, his expression darkening with each line. When he finished, he very carefully smoothed the paper and set it on the table. Pack your things, he said quietly. Clara's heart sank. Of course, she'd expected this. I'll be ready within the hour, if you could spare a horse. Pack for a trip to town. We're going to see Judge Hawkins about this harassment. She stared at him. You're not sending me away. Why would I do that? He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Clara, do you want to go back to this man? No! The word burst from her. I'd rather die than... She stopped, breathing hard. Then you're not going anywhere. His tone was matter-of-fact. Now, tell me the truth. All of it. I need to know what we're facing. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, gathering courage. I met Sam 5 years ago in New Orleans. He was charming, successful, or so it seemed. My parents had just died of yellow fever, leaving debts. Sam offered to pay them if I married him. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was lucky. After the wedding, he brought me to his ranch near the Mexican border. That's when I learned what he really was, a gun runner, selling weapons to anyone with gold. He had connections everywhere, lawmen in his pocket, rivals who disappeared. And you tried to leave? Not at first. I was his wife, I'd made vows. And then Rose came along, and for a while, things were better. Sam seemed pleased to have an heir. Her voice caught. When she died, he blamed me, said I was too weak to produce a healthy child. He started talking about taking a second wife, a stronger woman who could give him sons. Gideon's jaw tightened. The man's a fool. The night I left, he'd been drinking, talking about a young Mexican girl whose father owed him money. How he could take her in trade, keep us both. Clara's hands clenched. I couldn't bear it, so I took my savings and ran, burned the barn on my way out with any luck. He thinks I died in the fire, but he doesn't think that anymore. No, she met his eyes. Gideon, you don't know what he's capable of. He once shot a man for looking at me too long. He'll come here, and he won't come alone. Let him come. Gideon stood. I've got 20 good men and the law on my side. This isn't the border, and Sam Crane will find Texas justice works differently than what he's used to. That afternoon, they rode to town together. Judge Hawkins, a stern man with silver whiskers, listened to their story with growing displeasure. Harassment, threats, destruction of property, he mused. I can issue a warrant for this Morrison fellow, but Crane himself hasn't committed any crimes in my jurisdiction. Yet, he leaned back. My advice, arm your men, document everything, and shoot if they set foot on your land uninvited. Texas law is clear on a man's right to defend his property. As they left the courthouse, Clara noticed how the townspeople watched them, some with curiosity, others with knowing looks. News traveled fast in Red Hollow.
"They're all staring,"
she murmured. "Let them." Gideon helped her into the wagon. "Though we should stop at Sullivan's. You need a pistol." "I don't know how to shoot." "Then you'll learn." At the general store, old Sullivan produced a small Colt pocket pistol. "Lady's gun," he said, eyeing Clara with interest. "Light, accurate, and fits in a pocket or reticule." Clara held it gingerly, surprised by its weight. "It seems so final." "Protection often is," Gideon replied. "We'll start lessons tomorrow." They were loading supplies when Sheriff Watson approached, his badge glinting in the afternoon sun. "Gideon, miss." He touched his hat. "Thought you should know. There's been strangers asking questions. 5 men staying at the boarding house. They're being careful, but my deputy heard them mention Crane's name." "Morrison?" Gideon asked. "He's one of them. The others." Watson shrugged. "Trail trash. From the look of them, armed heavy. I've got no cause to run them out, but I'm watching." As they drove back to the ranch, Clara sat in silence, overwhelmed by the speed at which her carefully constructed new life was unraveling. The weight of the pistol in her pocket felt like an anchor, dragging her down. "You're thinking of running again," Gideon observed. She started. "How did you—" "Same look Margaret got when she was planning something I wouldn't like." His hands were steady on the reins. "Won't work, you know. Men like Crane don't give up. You'll be looking over your shoulder forever. Better than bringing death to your door. Maybe I'm tired of my door being so quiet." He glanced at her. "Clara, this house was dying. The ranch was just existing. Then you came, and suddenly there's life again. Bread in the oven, flowers on the table, someone humming in the kitchen. You think I'll give that up because some border rat makes threats? You barely know me." "I know enough." He was quiet for a moment. "I know you work harder than any 2 people. I know you sing when you think no one's listening. I know you leave coffee on the stove for Jose when he rides night watch. I know you talk to Margaret's portrait when you dust the parlor, telling her about your day like she's an old friend." Clara flushed. "You heard that?" "Sound carries in that house." His voice softened. "She would have liked you, would have admired your courage." "I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being afraid that you make mistakes." That evening, after dinner, Gideon led her to the barn. Lanterns cast pools of golden light as he set up targets against hay bales. The hands had been dismissed, giving them privacy for her first lesson. "Hold it like this," he said, positioning her hands on the pistol. "Don't fight the weight, let it settle naturally." His hands were warm over hers, his presence solid at her back. Clara tried to focus on his instructions, but found herself distracted by his nearness, the scent of leather and soap that clung to him. "Breathe," he murmured. "In through your nose. Hold it. Squeeze the trigger as you exhale." The gun cracked, making her jump. The bullet went wide, missing the target entirely. Again, Gideon said patiently, "This time, don't close your eyes." An hour later, Clara was hitting the target more often than not. Her arms ached and her ears rang, but there was a fierce satisfaction in watching her shots grow more accurate. "You're a natural," Gideon said, and she glowed at the praise. "Same time tomorrow." "Yes," she hesitated. "Gideon, thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," he said grimly. "This is far from over." That night, Clara lay awake in the blue room, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Guards walked the perimeter. She could hear their boots on the gravel, see the occasional flare of a match. Somewhere in the darkness, danger waited. Sam wouldn't wait the full week. He'd probe their defenses, test their resolve. A soft knock made her heart leap. "Clara," Gideon's voice, low and urgent. "Get dressed. Ryder's coming." She threw on a wrapper and hurried to the window. In the distance, torches bobbed like fireflies. 5, 6, maybe more. They were moving slowly, deliberately, making no effort to hide. "They're not attacking," she said as Gideon joined her. "No, they're sending a message." His face was hard in the moonlight. "They want us to know they're here, want us to sweat, lose sleep, make mistakes." The riders stopped just outside rifle range, torches forming a semicircle. One rider advanced alone, and even at this distance, Clara recognized Morrison's slouch. "Price," Morrison's voice carried clearly. "Got a message from Mr. Crane. He's willing to be reasonable. Send the woman out, and we ride away. No harm to you or your men. You've got 1 hour to decide." Gideon opened the window. "Here's my answer. Morrison, get off my land before I have my men use you for target practice. And tell Crane if he wants his wife. He can come himself instead of sending hired dogs." Morrison laughed. "Have it your way. Price, but this is your last chance for a peaceful solution. After tonight, things get messy." The riders retreated, their torches winking out one by one. Clara realized she was trembling, and not entirely from fear. Gideon had called her Crane's wife, acknowledging the claim even as he rejected it. The distinction mattered in this world of careful legal boundaries. "Try to sleep," Gideon said. "Tomorrow will be a long day." "How can you be so calm?" He turned from the window, and she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't calm at all. He was coldly, methodically furious. "Because I've already lost everything I cared about once, I won't let it happen again." After he left, Clara returned to bed but found sleep impossible. Below her window, she could hear Jose organizing the watch, his steady voice reassuring in the darkness. These men were risking their lives for her, a woman they barely knew, who'd brought danger to their door. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky pink and gold, Clara made a decision. She would not run. She would stand and fight, not just for herself, but for this place that had become her sanctuary, for the man who'd offered her protection without price. In the distance, a coyote howled, wild and free. Clara touched the pistol on her bedside table and smiled grimly. Sam Crane thought he was hunting a rabbit. He was about to learn he'd cornered a wildcat instead. The attack came 3 nights later, swift and brutal. Clara woke to the sound of breaking glass and Jose's shouted warning. She grabbed her pistol and ran to the window, her heart pounding as she saw flames licking at the barn's edges. "Fire!" The cry went up across the ranch as men stumbled from the bunkhouse, pulling on boots and grabbing buckets. In the chaos, Clara spotted dark figures moving through the shadows, Crane's men using the fire as a distraction. She was halfway down the stairs when Gideon caught her arm. "Stay inside. This is what they want to draw us out." "But the horses?" "Jose's handling it. I need you safe." His eyes were fierce in the flickering light. "Can you shoot from the upstairs windows?" Clara nodded, fear crystallizing into determination. They positioned themselves at different windows, watching as the ranch hands formed bucket brigades. The fire hadn't caught fully. Quick action was saving the barn, but Clara could see this was only the beginning. A shadow moved near the house. Clara aimed and fired, her shot splintering wood near the man's head. He cursed and retreated, but 2 more took his place. "They're trying for the kitchen door," she called to Gideon. His rifle cracked in response. Minutes stretched like hours as they defended the house, the night air thick with smoke and gunpowder. Clara's hands were steady now, all her practice paying off as she placed shots that kept the intruders at bay. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. Morrison's voice rang out, "Pull back, boys, we've made our point." The attackers melted into the darkness, leaving behind scorched wood and shattered nerves. Gideon and Clara emerged to find the barn saved but damaged, and 2 ranch hands nursing minor wounds. "Could have been worse," Jose reported grimly. "They weren't trying to burn us out, just rattle us." "Well, they succeeded," one of the younger hands muttered, his face pale. Gideon's voice cut through the murmurs. Anyone who wants to leave can collect their pay in the morning. No shame in it. This isn't your fight." The men exchanged glances. Then Tom, the eldest besides Jose, spat tobacco juice and drawled. "Been riding for the Double Diamond for 8 years, boss. Ain't about to let some border trash run me off now." A chorus of agreement rose from the others. Clara felt her throat tighten at their loyalty. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. A woman drove up in a weathered buggy, her gray hair pulled back severely and her dress travel-stained. Clara watched from the porch as she climbed down with surprising agility. "I'm looking for Sarah Mason," the woman announced. "Or Clara Hale, as she's calling herself now." Clara's blood chilled, but she stepped forward. "I'm Clara Hale." The woman studied her with sharp hazel eyes. "I'm Martha Crane, Sam's mother." Gideon appeared at Clara's shoulder, his presence reassuring. "Mrs. Crane, this is unexpected." Mr. Price, I presume may we speak inside? I've come a long way. And despite what you might think, I'm not here as Sam's ally." They gathered in the parlor, tension thick as summer humidity. Martha Crane sat ramrod straight, her weathered hands folded in her lap. "I know what my son is," she began without preamble. "I've known since he was young. There's something broken inside Sam, something I couldn't fix with love or discipline." She looked directly at Clara. "I'm sorry for what you endured as his wife." Clara found her voice. "Why are you here?" "To warn you, and perhaps to help, if you'll let me." Martha's expression hardened. "Sam's planning something bigger than these night raids. He's gathered more men 15, maybe 20. He means to take you by force, and he doesn't care who dies in the process." "When?" Gideon asked. 2 days, maybe 3. He's waiting for reinforcements from Mexico." Martha reached into her bag and withdrew a folded paper. "I took this from his desk. It's a map of your ranch. Mr. Price, with guard positions marked, someone's been watching you." Gideon studied the map, his jaw tightening. It was detailed, too detailed. Someone on the inside had been feeding information to Crane. "Why betray your own son?" Clara asked softly. Martha's composure cracked slightly. "Because I've already buried one grandchild. Rose was a sweet girl. I held her when she was born. Watched her take her first steps when she died." She paused, gathering herself. "Sam forbade me to comfort you, said grief would make you stronger. That's when I knew he was beyond redemption." "What do you want in return?" Gideon's tone was cautious. "Nothing, only—" Martha hesitated. "When this is over, however it ends, write to me. Let me know you're safe. It's all an old woman can ask." After she left, Gideon called Jose and his most trusted men. They studied the map, identifying weaknesses in their defenses. The trader's information was accurate, but not current changes made in the last few days weren't reflected. "We need to find the spy," Jose said. "Already have a suspicion." Gideon replied, "Leave that to me. For now. We prepare. Clara, I want you to—" "I'm not hiding," she interrupted. "I can shoot now, thanks to you. I won't cower while others fight my battles." Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them: acknowledgement, respect, and something deeper neither was ready to name. That night, Gideon set his trap. He casually mentioned false plans within earshot of the suspected spy, a young hand named Davis, who joined them just weeks before Clara arrived. Sure enough, Davis slipped away after dark. Jose followed at a distance, confirming he met with Morrison at an abandoned line shack. They let Davis return, not wanting to alert Crane that they knew. Instead, they fed him false information guard positions that would be empty, weak points that would be heavily defended. Clara found sleep impossible. She wandered the house, checking windows, double-checking her ammunition. In the parlor, she paused before Margaret's portrait. "I'm not trying to take your place," she whispered. "But I think I love him. Is that wrong? He's a good man. You're Gideon. He deserves happiness again. Talking to ghosts. She spun to find Gideon in the doorway. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. He moved to stand beside her. You know what Margaret told me once? She said if anything happened to her, I should find someone else. Made me promise not to shut myself away. His voice was rough. I was angry at her for saying it. Now I understand. Gideon. He turned to face her fully. When this is over, when Crane is dealt with, we need to talk about the future, about possibilities. Clara's heart raced. What kind of possibilities? Instead of answering, he cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. The kind worth fighting for, worth living for. Their lips met, soft and tentative at first, then with growing passion. 3 years of loneliness, 6 months of fear, all of it fell away in that moment. When they parted, both were breathless. I should go, Clara whispered, though she made no move to leave. Stay. His arms encircled her. Just stay with me tonight, not for what you're thinking. He added quickly, I need to know you're safe, need to hold you. They spent the night in the parlor. Clara curled against him on the settee, his arms protective around her. For the first time since leaving Sam, she felt truly safe. But with dawn would come reckoning. As the first light crept across the sky, Jose appeared in the doorway. His knowing smile faded as he delivered his news. Riders coming, jefe, many riders. Gideon pressed a kiss to Clara's forehead. Remember what I taught you. Stay calm, breathe, and shoot straight. Gideon, she caught his hand. Whatever happens, nothing's happening except Sam Crane learning Texas doesn't bend to border thugs. His eyes were hard as flint. Get to your position. It's time. Clara ran upstairs, her heart pounding but her hands steady. From her window, she could see them coming, a dust cloud on the horizon that resolved into mounted men. At their head rode a figure she recognized even at a distance, Sam Crane, come to claim what he believed was his. She checked her pistol one more time and whispered a prayer not for herself, but for the brave men preparing to defend her, for the man she'd come to love, for the future they might yet have, if they survived the next hour. The riders stopped just outside rifle range. Sam Crane rode forward alone, supremely confident. He'd always been handsome in a cold way, dark hair, sharp features, eyes like chips of obsidian. Sarah, he called. Come out, wife. This foolishness has gone on long enough. Clara opened her window. I'm not your wife anymore, Sam. I never was. Not truly. A wife is a partner, not property. His face darkened. You took vows before God. And you broke them with every cruel word, every controlling act. Her voice grew stronger. I'm free now, and I'm staying that way. Then you've chosen death, yours and theirs. Sam wheeled his horse. Take the house. The battle for the Double Diamond had begun. The battle erupted in a thunderous cacophony of gunfire and shouts. Crane's men charged from multiple directions, but Gideon's preparations held the false intelligence Davis had carried led them straight into carefully positioned crossfire. Clara fired from her window, watching one attacker tumble from his horse. Her hands were steady despite the chaos, each shot deliberate and purposeful. Below, she could see Gideon directing the defense from behind an overturned wagon, his rifle speaking with deadly precision. The west side, Jose's shout carried over the din. They're breaking through. Clara ran to the opposite window in time to see 5 riders penetrating their defenses. Without thinking, she grabbed her pistol and a rifle from Margaret's room. Gideon had taught her to use both and raced down the back stairs. The kitchen door burst open just as she reached it. Jake Morrison stood there, gun raised, an ugly smile on his face. Well, coming along quiet-like. Or do I have to? Clara shot him point blank, the small pistol bucking in her hand. Morrison's expression shifted from triumph to shock as he crumpled backward. She stepped over him without a second glance, her focus on the larger threat. In the yard, 3 of Crane's men were advancing on the house while 2 others engaged the ranch hands. Clara dropped to one knee behind a water barrel, bracing the rifle as Gideon had shown her. Her first shot went wide, but the second caught an attacker in the shoulder, spinning him around. Clara, Gideon's voice, tight with fear and fury. He was fighting his way toward her, but 2 men blocked his path. That's when she saw him, Sam Crane himself, spurring his black stallion toward her position. His face was a mask of cold rage, the civilized veneer completely stripped away. "You killed Morrison," he snarled, raising his pistol. "My best man, shot by a woman playing with guns." "He should have stayed away," Clara replied, surprising herself with her calm. "Just like you should have let me go." "You're my wife," the words tore from him. "Mine by law and by right. No piece of paper changes that." "I was never yours, Sam. I was just too afraid to see it." She kept the rifle trained on him, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "But I'm not afraid anymore." Something flickered in his eyes. Not love, she realized, but wounded pride. He'd never cared for her as a person, only as a possession, a symbol of his control. "Then you're no use to me at all." He aimed his pistol directly at her heart. Time seemed to slow. Clara saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the muzzle flash, felt the bullet whisper past her cheek. Her own rifle cracked in response, and Sam Crane jerked in his saddle, a red stain spreading across his chest. He looked down at the wound with almost comical surprise. You actually shot me." "I told you," Clara said quietly. "I'm not afraid anymore." Sam swayed, tried to speak, then toppled from his horse. He hit the ground hard and didn't move again. For a moment, the battle seemed to pause. Then one of Crane's men shouted, "The boss is down, Sam's dead." The fight went out of the attackers like air from a punctured balloon. Those who could mounted up and fled, leaving their dead and wounded behind. The siege of the Double Diamond was over almost as suddenly as it had begun. Clara stood frozen, staring at Sam's body. The rifle slipped from nerveless fingers as the reality of what she'd done crashed over her. She'd killed him. Her husband, former husband, the man she'd once promised to honor and obey. Strong arms enveloped her, turning her away from the sight. "Don't look," Gideon murmured against her hair. "It's over. You're safe now." "I killed him," she whispered, shock making her voice thin. "I actually killed him." "You defended yourself. There's no shame in that." He held her tighter. He made his choice when he came here with violence in his heart. The aftermath was a blur of activity. Sheriff Watson arrived with deputies, having been alerted by the gunfire. He surveyed the scene with professional detachment, taking statements and examining bodies. "Clear case of self-defense," he pronounced. "Crane came here armed, with superior numbers, making threats. You had every right to protect yourselves." He paused beside Sam's body. "Been wanting to put this one in the ground for years. He's caused misery from here to Mexico." 3 of Gideon's men were wounded. None seriously. They'd lost one young Ben Cooper, barely 19, who'd taken a bullet meant for Jose. They buried him that evening as the sun painted the sky crimson, every hat removed, every head bowed. Clara stood between Gideon and Jose, tears streaming down her face. "He died because of me. They all risked their lives because of me." "He died protecting his home," Tom corrected gently. "We all knew the risks. Ben wouldn't want you carrying guilt over his choice." That night, the house felt eerily quiet after days of tension. Clara couldn't eat, couldn't settle. She found herself in the kitchen, mechanically kneading bread dough, the familiar action soothing her frayed nerves. Couldn't sleep either. Gideon appeared in the doorway, looking as exhausted as she felt. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face." She punched the dough harder than necessary. Not angry or threatening, just surprised, like he couldn't believe I'd actually stand up to him. "That's because he never really knew you." Gideon moved to stand beside her. He saw what he wanted, a pretty possession, someone to control. He never saw the strength, the courage, the fierce spirit. I don't feel strong. I feel... She struggled for words. Empty, relieved, guilty for feeling relieved. It's all tangled up inside. That's normal. Taking a life, even in self-defense, leaves a mark. His voice carried the weight of experience. But you did what you had to do. For yourself, for us, for the future. The future, Clara repeated softly. What happens now? Gideon took her flour-dusted hands in his. Now you heal. We both do. And when you're ready, when the shadows don't loom so large, we talk about that future I mentioned. Gideon. She searched his eyes. I'm not sure I know how to be a wife again. Sam twisted everything, made it about possession and control. What if I can't? Then we'll learn together. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each palm gently. Partnership, not possession. Love, not control. The way it should be. They stood there in the lamp-lit kitchen, surrounded by the familiar smells of yeast and flour, finding comfort in each other's presence. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the world in soft pastels, a gentle contrast to the violent reds of the day before. A knock interrupted the moment. Jose entered, hat in hand. Señorita Clara, there's a woman outside, says she's Sam Crane's mother. Martha Crane stood by the gate, her face drawn but composed. She looked older than she had just days ago, grief etching new lines around her eyes. I've come for Samuel's body, she said simply. Whatever he became, he was still my son. Clara felt Gideon tense beside her, but she stepped forward. Of course, I'm sorry. Mrs. Crane, I never wanted... I know. Martha's voice was steady. You did what you had to do. I don't blame you. She paused, studying Clara with those sharp eyes. You look different, stronger. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling, child. It's about standing when everything in you wants to fall. Martha reached into her bag and withdrew an envelope. Samuel's will. He never changed it after Rose died. Everything goes to you, the ranch, the accounts, all of it. Blood money, mostly. But perhaps you can do some good with it. Clara stared at the envelope. I don't want it. Want and need are different things. Take it. Build something better than what he made. Martha's composure finally cracked. Give me something to hope for from this tragedy. After Martha left with Sam's body, Clara stood holding the envelope like it might bite her. Inside was a fortune built on violence and illegal dealings, wealth she'd never wanted, bought with blood. Burn it, she said suddenly. I don't want his money. Wait, Gideon stayed her hand. Think about this. You could do good with it, help the families of men he hurt, build a school, support the church, turn his darkness into light. Clara considered this. The poetry of it appealed, using Sam's ill-gotten gains to heal rather than harm. A school, she mused, for girls, to teach them they're more than property, that they have choices. The Sarah Rose School, Gideon suggested, for your daughter. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but for the first time in days, they weren't bitter. She would have liked that, a place where girls could learn, grow strong, make their own choices. As the sun climbed higher, warming the land that had seen so much violence, Clara felt something shift inside her. The weight of the past wasn't gone, might never fully leave, but it no longer held her prisoner. She was free, truly free for the first time in her life, free to choose her path, free to love without fear, free to build something new from the ashes of what was. And standing there with Gideon's hand warm in hers, the future spreading before them like an unwritten page, Clara knew exactly what she would choose. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the ranch as riders approached from the east. This time, Clara felt no fear as she recognized Sheriff Watson's distinctive gray hat, Beside him rode Judge Hawkins and several men she didn't know, official-looking types in city clothes despite their horses. Gideon, Miss Hale. The sheriff touched his hat. These gentlemen are from Austin, come to investigate the recent unpleasantness. One of the strangers, a thin man with steel-rimmed spectacles, introduced himself. Marcus Thornwood, State Attorney's Office. We've been tracking Sam Crane's operations for years. Your actions here have given us the opportunity to dismantle his entire network. They gathered in the parlor, where Thornwood spread documents across the table. Crane kept meticulous records, names, dates, shipments. With your permission, Miss Hale, we'd like to examine his properties, seize his assets for the state.
Take it all,
Clara said firmly.
though I've already decided what to do with my portion, whatever the law allows me to keep.
Thornwood's eyebrows rose as she explained her plan for the school.
Admirable,
Miss Hale. The state would certainly support such an endeavor. Education is the future of Texas. The investigation took 3 days. Lawmen swarmed Crane's border ranch, uncovering weapons caches and evidence of numerous crimes. Several of his associates were arrested. Others fled to Mexico. The network that had terrorized the border region for years crumbled like a house of cards. During this time, Clara threw herself into work, trying to restore normalcy to the Double Diamond. But the ranch hands treated her differently now, not with fear or suspicion, but with deep respect. She'd proven herself in fire and blood, earning her place among them. One evening, she found Jose mending tack in the barn. "The men are calling you La Valiente," he said with a slight smile. "The brave one."
I don't feel brave,
Clara admitted, sitting on a hay bale.
I feel changed, like I'm not sure who I am anymore.
You are who you always were, señorita. Only now, you know it too. Jose's weathered hands never paused in their work. The patron, he sees it, has seen it from the beginning, I think.
Jose,
Clara hesitated, then forged ahead.
What was she like, Margaret?
The foreman's face softened. Ah, Senora Margaret. She was sunshine, that one. Always laughing, always making others laugh. She would sing while she worked. Terrible voice, but such joy in it. He chuckled at the memory. Very different from you, señorita.
Oh.
Clara felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. But, Jose continued, I think that is good. The patron doesn't need another Margaret. He needs someone who understands the darkness he's walked through. Someone who's walked through their own. That night, Gideon found Clara in Margaret's garden, her garden now pulling weeds by lamplight. The investigators are finished, he said. They'll be leaving in the morning.
Good.
She didn't look up. I'm tired of guns and badges and questions about that night. Clara. He knelt beside her, stilling her restless hands. Talk to me. I killed my husband, she said baldly. Whatever he was, whatever he did, I took vows, and I shot him dead in your yard. What kind of woman does that make me?
A survivor.
His voice was fierce. A woman who chose life over death, freedom over slavery. God doesn't demand we submit to evil. Clara, fighting back isn't a sin. Then why do I feel so guilty? Because you're human. Because you have a conscience. Because even justified acts can wound us. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. But guilt and regret aren't the same thing. Do you regret saving your life? Saving mine, protecting innocent men? No, she whispered. God help me, no, I'd do it again. Then let the guilt go. It serves no purpose but to chain you to a past you've already escaped. They stayed there in the garden as the lamp burned low, talking about everything and nothing. About the school Clara wanted to build, about the ranch's future, about small things, her preference for morning coffee, his habit of reading late into the night. Finally, as the moon rose full and bright, Gideon stood and offered her his hand. Walk with me. They strolled through the ranch, past the barn where the confrontation had taken place, now repaired, showing no signs of violence. past the bunkhouse where the hands were settling for the night, out to a small rise that overlooked the vast expanse of the Double Diamond. All of this, Gideon gestured to the moonlit landscape, I built for a future that died with Margaret and Ben. For 3 years, I've been a ghost haunting my own land. Then you came. Gideon, let me finish. He turned to face her fully. I'm not asking you to replace what I lost. I'm asking you to help me build something new. Something ours. What are you saying? Instead of answering directly, he dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside, a simple gold ring set with a single pearl caught the moonlight. It was my grandmother's. She was a strong woman, came to Texas when it was still Mexico, raised 6 children, buried 2 husbands, ran a ranch alone for 10 years. She would have liked you. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Gideon! I know it's too soon. I know you need time to heal, to find yourself again. But I also know that life is uncertain and tomorrow isn't promised. His voice roughened. I love you. Clara Hale. Not because you need protection or because you're beautiful or because you brought my house back to life. I love you because you're brave and stubborn and kind. Because you talk to portraits and hum off key when you cook and argue with Jose about the proper way to make tortillas. I don't hum off key, Clara protested through tears. You really do, he smiled. Marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but when you're ready, when the shadows don't loom so large, when you can say yes because you want to, not because you need to. Clara looked at him, this good man who'd offered her shelter without conditions, who'd stood against violence for her sake, who saw her not as property but as a partner. Ask me again. Clara Hale, will you? Yes, the word burst from her, surprising them both. Yes, because I want to, because I love you, because I choose you not from fear or necessity, but from joy. She laughed, sudden and bright. Though I reserve the right to a long engagement, and I absolutely do not hum off key. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose and kissed her under the vast Texas sky. It was different from their first kiss, no desperation, no stolen moment. This was a promise, a beginning, a choice made freely. When they returned to the house, Jose was waiting on the porch, a knowing smile on his weathered face. About time, patron. The men have been taking bets. Jose, Clara protested, but she was laughing. Welcome to the family, señorita. The foreman touched his hat. Officially, this time. News of the engagement spread through the ranch like wildfire. By morning, the hands were already planning a celebration. Tom started building what he swore would be the finest wedding arch in Texas, while the younger men argued about who would play fiddle at the reception. But amidst the joy, there was work to be done. Clara threw herself into planning the school, corresponding with educators in Austin and San Antonio. The old Crane Ranch would be transformed instruments of death, giving way to books and slates and hope. One afternoon, while she was sketching classroom layouts, a familiar buggy appeared on the road. Martha Crane had returned, dressed in morning black but with a purposeful air. I heard about your engagement, she said without preamble, and about the school. I want to help. Clara blinked. Mrs. Crane. Martha, please. I have no family left, considerable money of my own, and a lifetime of regrets. Her chin lifted. Let me be part of building something good, for Rose, for all the children Sam's actions orphaned, for redemption, if such a thing is possible. And so an unlikely partnership formed. Martha proved invaluable, her connections and experience smoothing the way for the school's establishment. She and Clara worked side by side, 2 women bound by tragedy but determined to create hope. You're good for each other, Gideon observed one evening, watching them debate curriculum at the kitchen table. She understands. Clara said simply, the weight of loving someone who chose darkness, the guilt of surviving when others didn't. We don't have to explain to each other. The wedding was set for autumn, when the worst heat had passed and the land wore its gentlest colors. But first came the dedication of the Sarah Rose School for Girls. The ceremony drew people from across the county, ranchers and townspeople, officials from Austin, families who'd heard of this place where their daughters could receive a real education. Clara stood before the gathered crowd, wearing the new blue dress Gideon had insisted on buying her. "This school stands on ground once used for violence," she began, her voice carrying clearly. "But today, we consecrate it to learning, to growth, to the belief that every girl deserves to choose her own path." She caught sight of Gideon in the crowd, his eyes warm with pride. Beside him, Jose and the ranch hands stood in their best clothes, looking uncommonly civilized. Sheriff Watson was there, and Judge Hawkins, and dozens of faces she'd come to know over the past months. "The Sarah Rose School will teach more than letters and numbers," Clara continued. "It will teach strength and dignity, courage and compassion. It will teach our daughters that they are not property, but people, with minds and hearts and dreams worthy of pursuit." The applause was thunderous. As Clara cut the ribbon, she felt a presence not ghostly, but warm and approving. Somewhere, she thought, a little girl with Sam's dark hair and her eyes was smiling. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Gideon pulled her aside. "You did it. You took something born of pain and made it beautiful." "We did it," she corrected. "None of this would have happened without you. Without your protection, your faith in me, when I had none in myself." "Clara," he cupped her face gently. "You were always strong. I just gave you space to discover it." As the sun set over the Texas plains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Clara looked out at all they'd built and all they would build. The school was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead. She knew memories that surfaced at unexpected moments, scars that ached in the rain. But there would also be joy, love, purpose, a future written not by fear or necessity, but by choice. And that, Clara thought as Gideon's arms encircled her, was the greatest freedom of all. The dust had barely settled from the battle when the real work of rebuilding began. Clara stood in the yard where Sam had fallen, watching Jose and the hands repair the damage. The bloodstains were gone, scrubbed away by determined hands, but she could still see them in her mind's eye. "The new lumber's here," Tom called out, directing a wagon loaded with fresh planks. "Should have the barn looking better than new by week's end." Clara nodded absently, her attention caught by a rider approaching from town. As he drew closer, she recognized Dr. Whitmore's distinctive black bag tied to his saddle. "Miss Hale." The doctor tipped his hat. "Came to check on the wounded men. How are they faring?" "Better. Miguel's shoulder is healing clean, and Frank's leg seems to be mending well." She led him toward the bunkhouse. "Though I worry about Jose. He won't admit to any pain, but I've seen him favoring his ribs." Dr. Whitmore chuckled. "Sounds like Jose. Man's too proud for his own good." In the bunkhouse, the wounded men were recuperating with varying degrees of patience. Miguel, the youngest, chafed at his enforced rest, while Frank seemed content to let others handle his duties for once. Jose, as predicted, insisted he was fine as rain, even as he winced when the doctor examined him. "Cracked ribs, like I thought." Whitmore pronounced, "You need rest. Jose, real rest. Not whatever you call that restless puttering about you've been doing. But the work. We'll get done without you for a few days." Clara interrupted firmly. "Gideon's orders," she added when Jose looked ready to argue. That evening, she found Gideon in his study, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. The lamp cast a warm circle of light, leaving the corners in shadow much like the man himself, she thought. "How are they?" he asked without looking up. "Healing, complaining, the usual." She moved behind his chair, resting her hands on his shoulders. "You've been in here all day." Trying to make sense of Crane's holdings, The man had his fingers in everything cattle, guns, even a silver mine that may or may not exist. He leaned back into her touch. The lawyers will be here for weeks sorting it all out.
Let them sort,
Clara said, working at the knots in his shoulders.
You've done enough.
He caught one of her hands, pressing it to his lips. I was terrified, when I saw him riding toward you, when I couldn't get there in time. But I handled it. She moved around to perch on the edge of his desk.
Thanks to your teaching.
That's just it. His eyes were troubled. I made you into someone who could kill. What kind of man does that to the woman he loves? Clara cupped his face, forcing him to meet her gaze.
The kind who ensures she'll never be a victim again. You didn't make me a killer. Gideon, you made me a survivor. There's a difference.
They were interrupted by a knock. One of the newer hands, Davis's replacement, stood nervously in the doorway. Sorry to bother you, boss, but there's a lady here. Says she's Miss Clara's kin. Clara froze. She had no kin, none that would claim her anyway. Gideon's hand found hers as they walked to the parlor, where a woman waited mid-40s, graying hair, wearing traveling clothes of good quality. Sarah, the woman rose, her face lighting up. My dear girl, I've been searching everywhere. Clara stared, memory stirring.
Aunt Helena.
Yes. The woman moved forward as if to embrace her, then stopped at Clara's obvious tension. I know it's been years, but when I heard about Samuel, about what happened, I had to come. Helena Brookshire had been her mother's sister, married well and moved to Philadelphia before Clara was 10. They'd corresponded sporadically until Clara's marriage, when Sam had forbidden contact with her meddling relatives.
Why now?
Clara asked carefully. Helena's face crumpled slightly.
Because I failed you once. When your parents died,
I should have brought you to Philadelphia, given you a home, but my husband said. She stopped, composing herself. I let his prejudices override family duty. Then you married that awful man, and I told myself you'd chosen your path. And now I'm widowed, wealthy, and haunted by my cowardice. Helena straightened. I've come to make amends. If you'll let me, to be the family I should have been years ago. Clara felt Gideon's steady presence beside her, drawing strength from it. I don't need a rescue anymore. Aunt Helena, I have a home, a purpose, a future here. I can see that. Helena's eyes moved between them with growing understanding. And I'm glad. But perhaps you might have room for one more at your wedding. I promise not to interfere or overstay. I'd like to know you again. Sarah, or Clara, if you prefer. Something in Clara's chest loosened. Another piece of her past. But this one offering reconciliation rather than pain. Clara, she said softly. And yes, I think we'd have room. The next days brought a parade of visitors as news of the engagement spread. Ranchers' wives arrived with congratulations and barely veiled curiosity. Business associates of Gideon's came to size up his intended bride. Through it all, Clara maintained her composure, though she confided to Margaret's portrait one evening that she'd rather face Sam's gunman again than another afternoon of Mrs. Wellington's interrogation disguised as wedding planning. It was Martha Crane who proved her greatest ally during this time. The older woman had a way of deflecting intrusive questions and steering conversations to safer ground. She also threw herself into the school project with remarkable energy. 23 girls enrolled already, she reported one morning, spreading papers across the kitchen table. We'll need at least 2 teachers, possibly 3. The widow Patterson has teaching experience, Clara suggested. And there's a young woman in San Antonio, Miss Chen, who comes highly recommended. Martha made notes with efficient strokes. Good. We'll need to arrange housing for them. Perhaps convert part of the old bunkhouse. They worked in companionable focus until Helena appeared in the doorway. May I help? Clara saw Martha stiffen slightly, Sam's mother facing the aunt who'd abandoned Clara to Sam's clutches. But Martha merely nodded. We're discussing dormitory arrangements for students who live too far to travel daily. Helena proved surprisingly useful, her Philadelphia connections yielding sources for books and supplies. Watching the two older women work together, Clara felt another wound beginning to heal. From scattered pieces, a new family was forming. That evening brought an unexpected crisis. Jose, despite strict orders to rest, had attempted to help with the horses and collapsed in the barn. By the time they got him to the house, his face was gray with pain. "Damn fool." "Doctor," Whitmore muttered, examining him. "You've punctured a lung. Should have mentioned you were coughing blood." "Jose." "Didn't want worry." Jose gasped. Clara held his hand while the doctor worked, her heart in her throat. Jose had been kind to her from the beginning, one of the few who'd never questioned her place here. "Will he?" "He'll recover if he stops trying to be a hero." Whitmore's hands were gentle despite his sharp tone, but he needs careful nursing. Complete bed rest this time, no arguments. "I'll see to it," Clara said firmly. She moved Jose into the downstairs guest room, easier for tending than the bunkhouse. For the next week, she split her time between nursing him and managing the household. Gideon found her there late one night, dozing in a chair beside Jose's bed. "Clara," he whispered. "Come to bed. Maria can sit with him." "He's fevered," she protested groggily. "Someone needs to keep the compress cool." "Then I'll do it. You're exhausting yourself." He helped her to her feet. "Jose wouldn't want you wearing yourself out on his account." As if in agreement, Jose stirred. "Señorita," he mumbled. "Go rest. Too skinny for a bride." Clara laughed despite her worry. "See, he's giving orders again. He must be improving." Indeed, Jose's fever broke the next morning. Within days, he was complaining about the enforced inactivity, a sure sign of recovery. Clara was reading to him he'd developed a taste for Dickens when a commotion arose outside. Through the window, she saw riders approaching fast. Her blood chilled until she recognized Sheriff Watson among them. Still, the urgency in their movements spoke of trouble. Gideon met them in the yard. Clara couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw his face darken. He gestured sharply, and the men dismounted, following him inside. "What is it?" Clara asked as they gathered in the study. "Rustlers," Watson said grimly. "Hit the Rocking J last night, made off with 50 head, killed a man who tried to stop them." "Crane's men?" Gideon asked. "That's just it, we don't know. Could be leftovers from his gang. Could be opportunists who heard about the power vacuum." The sheriff accepted the whiskey Gideon offered. "Either way, they're bold and violent. I'm warning all the big spreads." After Watson left, Gideon increased the night guards despite their depleted numbers. Clara watched him strap on his gun belt, checking loads with practiced efficiency. "I thought it was over," she said quietly. "So did I." He pulled her close. "But this is different. Not personal. Just the usual greed and lawlessness. We've handled rustlers before," but Clara could see the weight settling back on his shoulders. He'd already lost men defending her. Now he faced losing more to common thieves. That night, she made a decision, finding Tom in the barn. She asked, "Will you teach me to ride properly, not just sitting a horse, but really riding fast, rough, the way the hands do?" Tom's weathered face creased in surprise. "That's not exactly fitting for a lady. Miss Clara." "I'm marrying a rancher. I need to be a rancher's wife, a real one, not just someone who tends house while others risk their lives. Boss know about this." "He will." She lifted her chin. "After I can prove I won't fall off at the first gallop." Tom studied her, then nodded slowly. "All right, but we start easy. And you wear proper clothes. Can't have you breaking your neck before the wedding." The riding lessons became her secret rebellion, while Gideon dealt with lawyers and threats, while Martha and Helena planned the school. Clara learned to handle a horse like she meant it. Tom proved a patient teacher, and she was a determined student. "You're natural," he admitted after a week. "Got good balance, soft hands, Few more weeks and you'll ride like you were born to it." It was during one of these lessons that trouble struck. Clara was practicing quick mounts when shots rang out from the north pasture. Without thinking, she vaulted into the saddle and spurred toward the sound, Tom shouting behind her. She crested the rise to see 5 men driving cattle toward the cut fence, 2 ranch hands trying to stop them. One hand was already down, clutching his arm. As she watched, a rustler raised his rifle toward the other. Clara didn't remember drawing the pistol from her saddlebag. One moment she was watching, the next the gun was in her hand, her shot taking the rustler's hat off. He spun, startled, giving the ranch hand time to find cover. "It's a woman," one of the rustlers shouted. "Don't matter," another snarled, turning his gun toward her. Clara fired again, her shot striking his shoulder and spinning him around. Then Tom was beside her, his rifle speaking authority. The rustlers, suddenly outnumbered as more hands arrived, abandoned the cattle and fled. "You all right?" Tom asked, but Clara was already dismounting, running to the wounded hand. It was young Pete, blood seeping between his fingers. "Just a graze," he said, though his face was white. "You saved my life, Miss Clara." "Foolish woman." Gideon's roar announced his arrival. He pulled up hard, practically falling from his horse in his haste to reach her. "You could have been killed." "So could Pete." She kept pressure on the wound, refusing to be cowed. "I couldn't just watch." "You promised you'd stay safe." "No," she corrected, meeting his furious gaze steadily. "I promised I'd stop being afraid. There's a difference." They glared at each other while the hands wisely found elsewhere to look. "Finally." Gideon's shoulders sagged. "You're going to turn my hair gray before our wedding day." "Probably." She managed a small smile. "But you'll never be bored." He pulled her against him, heedless of the blood on her hands or their audience. "Damn right I won't," he murmured into her hair. Later, as doctor, Whitmore tended Pete's wound. Word spread through the ranch. Clara had ridden to danger, shot true, stood her ground. She wasn't just the woman who'd killed Sam Crane in self-defense. She was a defender of the Double Diamond in her own right. "La Valiente," Jose said from his sickbed when she checked on him. "Now you truly earn the name." But Clara wasn't thinking about names or reputation. She was thinking about Gideon's face when he'd thought her in danger, about the men who risked themselves daily for the ranch, about the life they were building that was worth fighting for. "We need more men," she said to Gideon that night. "Good ones, loyal ones, men with families, maybe, who need the work and stability." Already thinking like a rancher's wife, he traced the curve of her cheek. "I've sent word to Fort Worth. There's men there, former soldiers, looking for work. Should have a dozen here by week's end." "Good." She caught his hand. "Because I won't hide while others fight. Not anymore. This is my home too, my fight too." "Our fight," he agreed. "Partners." As the moon rose over the Double Diamond, casting silver light across the healing land, Clara knew they'd face whatever came next together. The rustlers were just one more challenge in a life that would hold many. But she was no longer the frightened woman who'd arrived with a single carpetbag and a false name. She was Clara Hale, soon to be Clara Price, teacher, defender, partner, and she was no longer afraid. The October morning dawned crisp and golden, painting the Texas landscape in warm hues. Clara stood before the mirror in Margaret's room, her room now, as Helena and Martha fussed with her wedding dress. It was simple but elegant. Ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. Nothing like the heavy brocade Sam had forced her to wear years ago. "You look radiant," Helena said, tears in her eyes. "Your mother would be so proud." Martha adjusted the pearl combs in Clara's hair, a gift from Gideon, passed down through his family. "Remember to breathe, child, and smile. This is a celebration, not a trial." Through the window, Clara could see guests gathering in the garden she'd restored. The Sarah Rose school teachers had arrived early to help with decorations. transforming the space with ribbons and wildflowers. Judge Hawkins stood near the arbor Tom had built, talking with Sheriff Watson and Dr. Whitmore. "Miss Clara," Jose appeared in the doorway, still moving carefully but upright and dignified in his best suit. "The patron asks if you're ready. He says to tell you he'll wait forever if needed, but he'd prefer not to test that theory." Clara laughed, nerves easing. "Tell him 5 minutes." But she took one last moment alone, moving to Margaret's portrait. "Thank you," she whispered, "for raising a man worth fighting for. I promise to take care of him." The ceremony itself blurred in her memory later, walking through the house on Jose's arm, since she had no father to give her away. Seeing Gideon waiting beneath the arbor in his black suit, the way his eyes softened when he saw her. She remembered speaking vows with a steady voice, meaning every word about partnership and devotion. She remembered his hands trembling slightly as he slipped the ring on her finger, and the cheer that went up when Judge Hawkins pronounced them married. But clearest of all, she remembered the moment after their kiss, when Gideon whispered for her ears alone, "Welcome home, Mrs. Price." The celebration that followed filled the ranch with laughter and music. The hands had outdone themselves, tables groaning with food, lanterns strung between posts, fiddles and guitars creating a makeshift dance floor. Even the new men from Fort Worth, still learning the ranch's ways, joined in the festivities. "Never seen the boss smile so much," Tom commented, watching Gideon spin Clara in a country dance. "Been here 12 years, and this is the first time he's looked truly happy." As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the newlyweds finally found a moment alone on the porch. Clara leaned against her husband feeling a contentment she'd never imagined possible. "No regrets?" Gideon asked softly. "Only one." She looked up at him. "I wish Rose could have met you. Could have grown up here, safe and loved." "She is loved." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Every girl who walks through that school's doors will carry a piece of her forward. That's immortality of the best kind." They were interrupted by the arrival of a late guest, a weather-beaten man on a tired horse, asking for Mrs. Price. Clara tensed until she saw the badge U.S. Marshal. "Sorry to intrude on your wedding day, ma'am," the marshal said, hat in hand. "But I thought you'd want to know. We caught the last of Crane's gang trying to cross into Mexico. They'll stand trial in San Antonio." "All of them?" Clara asked. "Every last one. Your testimony won't be needed. We have enough evidence to hang them twice over. You're free. Mrs. Price, truly free." After he left, Clara stood silent for a long moment, absorbing the news. The last shadows of her past swept away on her wedding day. It felt like a sign, a blessing. The party continued late into the night, but eventually, the guests departed or found beds in the bunkhouse and main house. Clara and Gideon escaped to the foreman's cabin, which the hands had secretly prepared as a honeymoon retreat, fresh flowers, champagne cooling in a bucket, the bed turned down with new linens. "We could have used our room," Clara said, amused. "Let the guests have the house tonight." Gideon drew her close. "I want you to myself, without interruptions or obligations. Tomorrow we go back to running a ranch. Tonight we're just Clara and Gideon." In the morning, they woke to find frost painting the windows and each other's warmth dispelling any chill. Real life waited rustlers to catch, a ranch to run, a school to finish building, but for now, they lingered in their private paradise. "I love you," Clara said, tracing the scar on his shoulder from an old injury. "I didn't think I'd ever say those words again and mean them. And I never thought I'd hear them." He caught her hand, kissing each finger. "We're a pair of broken souls who somehow make each other whole." When they finally emerged, they found the ranch running smoothly under Jose's recovered supervision. The older man took one look at their joined hands and matching smiles and nodded approvingly. "About time you took a day for yourselves," he said. "Now, unfortunately, we have business." The rustlers hit the Rocking J again last night, and so life resumed. But different now. Clara rode out with Gideon to inspect the damage, her presence no longer questioned by the hands. She'd proven herself in blood and courage. Now she was truly part of the Double Diamond's leadership. They found the Rocking J's owner, Bill Morrison, no relation to Jake, surveying his losses grimly. 20 head this time, and they shot another of my men, not fatal, thank God, but close. We need to work together. Gideon said, pool our guards, share information, maybe hire some rangers if the sheriff can't handle it. I'm listening, Morrison said. Then, to Clara's surprise, he turned to her. Mrs. Price, I owe you an apology. I was one of those who said Gideon was foolish to take you in, that you'd bring nothing but trouble. I was wrong. You weren't entirely wrong, Clara admitted. I did bring trouble, but I also brought the will to end it. That afternoon, they hosted a meeting of local ranchers, forming an alliance against the rustlers. Clara took notes, offered suggestions, and found herself accepted as an equal partner. When one rancher suggested, the ladies might prefer to wait inside, he was quickly corrected by the others. Mrs. Price stays, old Henderson said firmly. She's got more sand than half the men I know. The alliance worked. Within weeks, coordinated patrols caught the rustlers red-handed. This time, Clara stayed at the ranch, but she coordinated supplies and communication, proving that courage came in many forms. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the ranch in rare snow. Clara stood at the kitchen window, watching Gideon and the hands move the cattle to sheltered pastures. Her hand rested on her still flat stomach, treasuring a secret she'd share with him tonight. The Sarah Rose School had opened successfully, with 15 students starting and more enrolling weekly. Martha Crane had moved to a small house in town to be closer to the school, finding purpose in her grandmother's legacy. Helena had returned to Philadelphia but promised to visit in the spring, their correspondence regular and warm now. You're glowing, Gideon said that evening, coming in from the cold to find dinner waiting and candles lit. Am I? Clara served his favorite stew, watching him eat with satisfaction before sitting across from him. I have something to tell you. He looked up, suddenly alert to her tone. Good or bad? Good. Very good. She took his hand. We're going to have a baby. Doctor. Whitmore confirmed it this morning. Gideon went absolutely still, his face cycling through emotions, shock, joy, fear, wonder. A baby, he repeated. Our baby. Due in late spring, May, he thinks. Clara squeezed his hand. Are you happy? Instead of answering in words, he pulled her into his lap, holding her like precious glass. Happy doesn't begin to cover it, he said roughly. Terrified, elated, grateful, Clara. Do you know what this means? Life going forward? A future neither of us thought we'd have. I know. She rested her head against his shoulder. I'm scared too, after losing Rose. But doctor, Whitmore says I'm healthy. The baby's developing well. We have every reason to hope. They sat by the fire that night, making plans and dreams. The child would grow up on the Double Diamond, learning to ride and rope, attending the Sarah Rose School if a girl, carrying forward the legacy they were building. Spring came slowly, Clara growing round with new life as the land itself renewed. She had to give up riding, much to her frustration, but found other ways to stay involved. The ranch prospered, the school thrived, and their child grew strong within her. On a perfect May morning, as wildflowers carpeted the prairie, Clara brought their daughter into the world. They named her Faith in the future, in second chances, in love's power to heal the deepest wounds. She's perfect, Gideon whispered, cradling the tiny bundle while Clara watched from their bed. Absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, Clara noted. Poor child. And your stubborn chin. Heaven help us all. As if in agreement, Faith opened those eyes and gazed at her parents with solemn intensity. In that moment, Clara felt the last of her old life fall away. She was no longer the woman who'd fled in fear, no longer defined by loss or violence. She was Clara Price's wife, mother, teacher, protector. 5 years later, Clara stood again in the garden, watching Faith play with her younger brother Thomas while Gideon pushed their youngest, Margaret, on the swing he'd built. The Sarah Rose School had graduated its first class, young women heading out into the world with skills and confidence. The ranch had expanded, becoming one of the most successful in Texas.
Mama, look,
Faith called, showing off the flower crown she'd made.
I'm a princess.
You're perfect, Clara assured her, catching Gideon's eye over their daughter's head. He smiled, that special smile reserved just for her, and she knew he was remembering too the frightened woman at the boarding house, the desperate flight from violence, the courage found in necessity, the love discovered in freedom.
Penny for your thoughts, Martha Crane said, joining her.
The older woman had become a beloved grandmother figure to the children, her past sorrows transformed into present purpose.
Just thinking how different life turned out from what I expected,
Clara admitted.
Better or worse?
Clara looked at her family, her home, the life built from ashes and determination.
Better,
she said firmly. Infinitely better. As the sun set over the double diamond, painting the sky in the brilliant reds and golds that gave the region its name, Clara knew that some stories didn't end with happily ever after. Some continued with courageously ever forward, facing each challenge with hard-won wisdom and unshakable love. And that, she'd learned, was the greatest happiness of all. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Clara and Gideon's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine while sharing it. Where are you listening from today? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know where in the world this tale of courage and redemption has reached. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more authentic frontier stories. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and hit that hype button to help more listeners discover this powerful story of love conquering fear. Until next time, partners.